Django. Django is something that features prominently in the diet of the Maroons. This is called a bena. A bena. Bena. What is the bena used for? Catch birds. I don't have to mash up the finger here this morning, but I'm going to give it a try. Basically, what will be done is that this is bent backward, and I'm going to try and use this, as I said, without mashing up my finger. I hope. Anyway, this would have been set up like this and put in a tree, and they would have a bunch of berries here, and it would be set in such a way that the only way the bird could access the berries was to step on this. But once the bird stepped on this, the weight of stepping on this would cause this to fall out, and this, which would have been pinned, would snap back like that, catching the bird's legs. The Maroons tell me that if they tie it too tight, everybody loses, because he cut the bird leg right off. So the bird get away without any feet, and they have no bird. So nobody wins that way. But certainly they would have hunted. Hunting was clearly going to be a very big part of their lifestyle. In addition to hunting, of course, there was also farming. But let me read some more examples of hunting for you. Animal traps were very common. One, I've talked to you about the bena a while ago. Another one was called the tar stick. The tar stick is an exceedingly tall rod of bamboo. They take the sap from the jackfruit and cover the entire bamboo pole. And when the birds come into the trees to feed, they push the bird up, and the animals go on the pole and get stuck. So that is another example of something that they used to trap animals. Of course, they would have dug pits and other things as well. What are some of the animals they hunted? I mentioned the wild hog. Depending on where they were in the Caribbean, they would have hunted a number of things, whether it be porcupines, anteaters, armadillos, pony, agouti, iguanas, birds, and of course fish and jungle in the rivers and streams. So they were very efficient hunters and depending on a number of things. Farming was very important. They farmed a number of crops, typical grown provisions like yam, sweet potato, grains such as corn, millet, squashes, lentils, cassava naturally, and they would have learned certainly the Maroons of the Caribbean region would have learned about cassava cultivation from Taino and other Arawakan groups. So farming was a very important part of Maroon economy, as was hunting. Another very important aspect of Maroon culture is, of course, their music. This is a picture here of, again, the Moortown Maroons. And what they're doing right here is a form of performance that is fit for the public. But the Maroons also have performances that are not for public consumption, and the Moortown Maroons call it chromantic play. Chromantic play is a very significant part of Maroon culture. Chromantic play involves music and dance, but it is used for healing and other spiritual purposes. When there's a chromantic session, you have the persons here and a number of instruments are highlighted here. You have the chromantic drum, another which is seen there. You also have the adwa, which is just simply a triangle. Another instrument that they use is a shaker, which is simply a hollowed out calabash filled with seeds or stones. And they would have a gathering and in which the drummers start to play. Now during this drumming, and again I am just merely recounting to you from descriptions because there's no way that an obroni, like myself, obroni is the word that they use for outsiders, non-Maroons. There's no way an obroni like myself would ever be able to witness something like an episode of chromantic play. But during chromantic play, a number of dancers or a dancer who is called a fete man become a fete man F-E-T-T-E-H-M-A-N, Feteman. He becomes possessed with one of the spirits of their ancestors. So somebody is very sick and they want to have a healing. They're going to set up a chromanti play for the healing of this person. And they all gather in the appointed place. One of the terms that you might hear is Sappho Yard. If you go to Charlestown Maroons, they have a big yard which they call Sappho Yard. And in Moortown, they also hear them refer to as Sappho Yard, which is a meeting place. So they may go to the Sappho Yard and they have the drummer set up and they start the drumming. This is a special type of drumming which is used to summon their ancestral spirits. And after the ancestral spirits are summoned, a Feteman becomes possessed by one of these spirits. And it is believed that this ancestral spirit now, through the Feteman, is able to talk about the illness, say why the person is sick, and also give the prescription for the cure. Because many times these sicknesses, they believe, are not necessarily caused by natural forces alone. So a prescription can be given. I'll get back to that in a second. Sometimes, of course, in the whole chromanti play, you also see the use of a number of herbs, but I'll talk about herbs later. So chromanti plays a very important and sacred part of the ritual of the Maroons in Jamaica, especially the Moortown Maroons. And again, it's just a way in which we can see a number of our African cultural characteristics being preserved by these Maroon groups. Ancestral, not worship, but ancestral reverence and the belief in communicating with ancestral spirits is something that you see in a number of Afro-Jamaican religions. If you're familiar with revival or communal, it is the same. Of course, let's talk a bit about food. One of the most popular types of foods that you see coming from our African heritage is something called dukunu, or blue draws. Right. The Maroons in Jamaica refer to it as boyo. And here we just have a picture of the ingredients of boyo after they've been ground up. After they grind the material, they pour it into a banana leaf, fold it up, and it is put in the pot where it is boiled. Sometimes it is also can be put in on a cold stove. And dukunu is a very popular sweet that comes to us from our African heritage. Anybody familiar with this? Star what? It's not a star. Anybody else with another guess? This is actually, this is actually something called a carcoon. Maybe the picture that I'm showing you here, I don't know, maybe it's not the best picture, but what it is something probably not the size of my palm, probably about 2 inches in diameter, but it's very flat. As you see there, it is resting on the ground. It is probably only about half an inch in thickness. It has a very hard shell. I don't know if you've ever seen like the dolls that are made out of this, with the shell. Sometimes they make these dolls, they cut the shell in half and they use it as the head of the dolls. Anyway, carcoon is a nut. Inside this very hard shell, there's a white flesh to it. And carcoon is very popular in maroon areas in Jamaica. This again is just one of the ways, as I say, in which they adapted to their environment in order to survive. Carcoon requires special preparation. They take the carcoon and they roast it first. And they say they roast it on a fire until they hear a pop. They believe the carcoon in its natural state to be poisonous. So they roast the carcoon, and when they hear the pop, they believe that whatever poisonous gases there were have now been released. At that point, they crack open the shell and they take out the white flesh, and it's a very hard flesh, almost like, you know, when you coconut that you use for grating, it has that kind of toughness to it. And they soak it in water for anywhere from 3 to 9 days. After they soak it now, they cut it up into strips and put it in a variety of dishes. One dish that they use it in is carcoon rundown, which is a picture of there, which is just prepared like any other kind of rundown, except that they don't use, they use the carcoon in place of saltfish or mackerel. Another thing